The dim glow of the evening sun barely pierced through the heavy curtains in Liam's apartment. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and the faint trace of cigarette smoke, a lingering remnant of his late-night sessions. Liam Hunter, once celebrated as a virtuoso violinist, had fallen into obscurity after the sudden and tragic death of his wife Emily. It had been almost a year since the accident, but the pain remained fresh, lingering like a sour note in a broken symphony. He sat alone at his piano, hands hovering over the ivory keys, uncertain of where to begin. Music used to be his escape, a refuge where he could lose himself in the rhythm and flow of the notes, but now it felt empty. Every melody he composed faltered, unfinished, like his life without her. Just as his fingers brushed the keys, he heard it, a faint melody, delicate and distant, yet undeniably real. He froze, ears straining to catch the sound. It was unlike anything he had heard before, a gentle, ethereal tune that seemed to drift through the room, teasing the edge of his consciousness. "Is someone there?" Liam called out, his voice barely above a whisper. No answer. The apartment was silent, save for the faint hum of the city outside. But the melody persisted, growing clearer, more insistent. It wasn't coming from his piano. It wasn't coming from outside. It seemed to come from within him. A whisper carried on the breeze of his thoughts. With trembling hands, Liam reached for his violin, the one Emily had given him on their anniversary. As soon as the bow touched the strings, the melody swelled in his mind, guiding his fingers as if possessed. His heart raced. He hadn't played like this in months, yet the music flowed effortlessly, as though the instrument was alive with its own purpose. But as the last note faded, a chill ran down his spine. The room felt suddenly colder, darker, as though the shadows themselves were creeping closer. He set the violin down, his mind racing. Was he going mad? Or was the music real? The next day, Liam couldn't shake the melody from his thoughts. It followed him everywhere. On the subway, in the grocery store, even in the quiet of his morning coffee. It was subtle, like a distant hum, just barely audible but unmistakable. He searched through his old compositions, hoping to find some trace of the melody, but it wasn't there. It didn't belong to anything he had written or anyone else, as far as he could tell. And yet, it was so familiar, like a song he had forgotten long ago. That evening, as he sat at the piano again, the melody returned, stronger this time. His fingers danced across the keys, playing a tune that wasn't his own, a tune that seemed to come from somewhere beyond this world. There was something haunting about it, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. And then it hit him. It was Emily's song. She used to hum it softly when they were alone, a simple, sweet melody she had made up when they first started dating. It was their song, a private little tune she would sing to him when words weren't enough. Liam's heart pounded in his chest. How could he be hearing it now? Emily was gone, lost in the terrible crash that had stolen her from him. And yet, the music was here, as clear as day. He stood up abruptly, knocking over the stool in his haste. The room seemed to tilt, a sudden wave of dizziness washing over him. Was this some kind of hallucination? Was his grief playing tricks on him? But deep down he knew. This was Emily. She was trying to tell him something. Liam couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the melody echoed in his mind, growing louder, more urgent. He tossed and turned, his thoughts swirling in a storm of confusion and fear. By morning, he was exhausted, but the music still played, as relentless as ever. He grabbed his phone and dialed the one person he thought might understand, Sarah, Emily's sister. "Liam, is everything okay?" Sarah's voice was laced with concern. I don't know," he admitted, rubbing a hand over his face. "It sounds crazy, but I think I'm hearing Emily." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" Sarah finally asked, her voice soft. Liam explained everything. The melody, the feeling that it was coming from Emily, the growing sense of unease that gnawed at him. "I know it sounds impossible, but I can't shake the feeling that she's trying to warn me about something." Sarah was silent for a moment before speaking again. "I don't think you're crazy, Liam. Emily always said that music was a part of her soul. Maybe this is her way of reaching out to you." A chill ran through him. As comforting as Sarah's words were, they also filled him with dread. If Emily was trying to warn him, then something terrible was coming, and he had no idea what it was. The days that followed were a blur of tension and paranoia. The melody became a constant presence, lingering in the background of everything Liam did. It was no longer soft and sweet. Now it felt sharp, ominous, like a warning bell ringing in the distance. He started noticing other things too, shadows where there shouldn't be any, cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere, and a creeping sense of being watched. At first, he dismissed it as stress, a byproduct of the haunting music. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. One night, as he sat at the piano, trying to make sense of the melody, the lights flickered. His hands froze over the keys. The temperature in the room plummeted, and the shadows seemed to thicken, coiling around him like smoke. And then he heard it, a whisper, faint and indistinct, but unmistakably Emily's voice. "Liam, beware." He jumped to his feet, heart racing, scanning the room for the source of the voice. But there was nothing there, just the oppressive darkness pressing in on all sides. What was happening? Was this really Emily? Or was something else at play? Something darker? The thought made his blood run cold. Desperate for answers, Liam threw himself into research, poring over books on the supernatural, the afterlife, anything that might explain what was happening. He found stories of ghosts communicating through music, spirits lingering in places they had loved, but nothing that matched his experience. As the days passed, the warnings became more frequent, more desperate. Emily's voice would echo in his mind, sometimes clear, sometimes distorted, always carrying the same message: danger. He began to piece together fragments of what she was trying to tell him. There was something in the apartment, something dark and malevolent, lurking just out of sight. It was feeding off his grief, drawing strength from his pain, and it was getting stronger. Emily was trying to protect him, to warn him before it was too late. But how could he fight something he couldn't see? It happened on a stormy night, when the wind howled through the city streets and the rain lashed against the windows. The melody was louder than ever, filling the apartment with a sense of impending doom. Liam could barely think, the music consuming him, driving him to the edge of madness. And then, in the midst of the chaos, the shadows moved. A figure, tall and dark, emerged from the corner of the room, its form shifting and twisting as though made of smoke. It moved toward him, slow and deliberate, its presence suffocating, overwhelming. Liam's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. The music reached a fever pitch, and Emily's voice rang out, clear and desperate. "Run, Liam, run." But it was too late. The darkness closed in, enveloping him in its icy embrace. And then, silence. When the police arrived the next morning, they found the apartment empty, save for the piano, where a single note still hung in the air, lingering like a final, haunting goodbye.